My name is Rebecca, and at 34 years old, I thought I had the perfect marriage with Michael. We had built what I believed was an unshakable foundation over 10 years together. Then I noticed the late nights, the password changes, and finally discovered text messages that shattered my world. When I found out he was planning a romantic anniversary dinner with his mistress, something inside me snapped. Instead of crying, I made a reservation at the table right next to theirs and brought someone special along, her husband. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of survivors. Before my world came crashing down, Michael and I had what most people would consider a picture-perfect marriage. I was building a promising career as a marketing executive for a national retail chain, handling campaigns that required creativity, strategic thinking, and long hours that I willingly put in. My professional identity had always been important to me, and I took pride in climbing the corporate ladder on my own merit. I met Michael at my college roommate's wedding 7 years ago. He was standing alone by the bar, looking slightly uncomfortable in his tailored suit. There was something magnetic about his quiet confidence that drew me to him. I decided to approach him with 2 glasses of champagne and a cheesy pickup line that made him laugh. We ended up talking until the venue staff started stacking chairs around us. Our romance was a whirlwind. After 3 months of dating, Michael surprised me with a weekend trip to Cape Cod. As the sun set over the ocean, he dropped to one knee and presented a princess-cut diamond that caught the last golden rays of sunlight. I said yes without hesitation. 6 months later, we exchanged vows on that same beach, surrounded by 60 of our closest friends and family. I still remember the feel of sand between my toes as I walked toward him, the salt breeze carrying my veil behind me like a gossamer cloud. After the wedding, we pooled our savings and purchased a craftsman-style home in a quiet suburb outside Boston. The house needed work, but we spent weekends painting walls, replacing fixtures, and transforming it into our dream home. Michael installed hardwood floors while I designed a kitchen garden that bloomed with herbs and vegetables every summer. Our home became our sanctuary, filled with laughter and future plans. Our shared interests strengthened our bond. We both loved hiking the mountain trails in New Hampshire, attending indie film festivals, and trying new restaurants in the city. Sunday mornings meant coffee and crossword puzzles in our sunroom, a tradition neither of us ever wanted to miss. During winters, we would take weekend trips to Vermont for skiing, returning home to warm blankets and homemade hot chocolate spiked with peppermint schnapps. Like any couple, we faced challenges. 2 years into our marriage, Michael was passed over for a promotion he had worked tirelessly to earn. He fell into a brief depression, questioning his career path and worth. I supported him through this dark period, encouraging him to network with other firms and rebuild his professional confidence. When he eventually landed a better position at a more prestigious financial consulting firm, he credited my unwavering faith in him as his motivation to persevere. My best friend Amanda remained a constant presence in our lives. She had introduced me to Michael at her wedding, and she took every opportunity to remind us that she was the architect of our happiness. Amanda was fiercely loyal and perceptive. During our monthly lunch dates, she would listen to my stories about Michael with a smile, occasionally asking probing questions that I now realize were her subtle way of checking that I was truly happy. I trusted Michael completely. When business trips took him away for days at a time, I never questioned his fidelity. When late-night calls pulled him from our bed, I assumed they were work emergencies. His phone would sometimes buzz with text messages at odd hours, but I respected his privacy too much to pry. That trust was the bedrock of our relationship, and I believed it made our marriage stronger than most. Looking back, there were small changes I chose to ignore. Michael gradually became less enthusiastic about our weekend hikes, claiming fatigue from busy work weeks. Our intimate moments grew less frequent, with Michael often falling asleep early or staying up late to finish some reports. The thoughtful little gifts and surprise date nights that had been his trademark slowly disappeared. But I rationalized these changes as natural evolutions in a long-term relationship, never allowing myself to consider more troubling explanations. When he suggested separate vacations might be refreshing, I agreed, thinking the space might reignite our connection. I took a photography course in Santa Fe while he went on what he described as a golfing retreat with colleagues. He returned with a deep tan but no photographs, explaining that they had been too busy enjoying the course to take pictures. I accepted his explanation without question, still blind to the growing distance between us. The first real crack in my perfect marriage appeared on an ordinary Tuesday. Michael had always been transparent with his phone, often asking me to answer calls or texts when he was driving or busy. That evening, I reached for his phone to order takeout using his food delivery app, which had my favorite restaurants saved. The screen prompted for a passcode I had never seen before. "Since when do you lock your phone?" I asked, keeping my tone light and curious rather than accusatory. Michael glanced up from his laptop, his expression momentarily tense before smoothing into casual indifference. "Oh, new company policy. All employees have to password protect their devices since we access sensitive client information." He took the phone, entered the code, and handed it back without meeting my eyes. That explanation made sense, but something about his brief hesitation planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Later that week, that seed took root when Michael informed me he would be working late for the third time in a single week. "The Anderson account is a nightmare," he explained, kissing my forehead hurriedly as he grabbed his keys. "Don't wait up." At midnight, with Michael still not home, I called his office line on impulse. The call went straight to voicemail. Perhaps he was in a meeting room without his desk phone, I reasoned. But at 2 a.m, when he finally slipped into bed smelling faintly of unfamiliar cologne, that explanation felt hollow. The business trips increased in frequency. What had once been quarterly visits to clients now occurred bi-weekly, often announced with minimal notice. "The Seattle office needs me to troubleshoot in person," or "the Chicago team is struggling with that merger." Each time, Michael would pack hurriedly, his explanations becoming increasingly vague about which colleagues would be joining him or what specific issues required his physical presence. His appearance underwent subtle transformations. New tailored shirts appeared in his closet. He joined an expensive fitness club downtown instead of using our local gym. Twice-weekly sessions with a personal trainer sculpted his physique in ways that would have thrilled me had they been for my benefit. One Saturday, he returned from what should have been a routine haircut with an entirely new style that took years off his appearance. When I complimented him, his response was casual, thought it was time for a change. Our joint credit card statements revealed curious charges. A high-end jewelry store where I had received no gifts. Restaurant bills for places we had never visited together. A hotel charge in Boston, just 30 minutes from our home, on a night he had supposedly been working late. When I questioned this particular expense, Michael explained it away as a mistake, claiming the accounting department had accidentally charged a client meeting to his personal card. He promised to get it reimbursed and quickly changed the subject. My best friend Amanda noticed the changes before I fully admitted them to myself. During our monthly lunch, she observed my distracted demeanor and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "What's going on with you and Michael?" she asked directly. "And don't say nothing, because I've known you too long to buy that." I found myself confessing my growing unease, the small inconsistencies that individually meant nothing but collectively formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Amanda listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "Have you checked his phone?" she finally asked. I recoiled at the suggestion. I can't invade his privacy like that. What if I'm just being paranoid? What if there's a reasonable explanation for everything? Amanda's gaze was steady and compassionate. "Then you'll have peace of mind. But Rebecca, you need to trust your instincts. They're screaming at you right now." Despite Amanda's advice, I chose to believe in my marriage. Instead of investigating, I attempted to rekindle our connection. I planned a surprise weekend at the bed and breakfast where we had spent our first anniversary. Michael claimed an unmovable client commitment and suggested rescheduling. I cooked his favorite meals, bought special lingerie, and tried to recapture the spontaneity of our early relationship. Each attempt was met with appreciative but dispassionate responses that left me feeling increasingly desperate. The physical distance between us grew into an unbridgeable chasm. Michael no longer reached for me in the night. Our goodbye kisses became perfunctory pecks. When I initiated intimacy, he was either too tired or preoccupied with work stress. The rejection cut deeper each time, eroding my confidence and leaving me questioning my attractiveness and worth. After weeks of mounting anxiety, I finally confronted him one evening as he packed for yet another overnight trip. "Are you having an affair?" The question escaped before I could consider a more tactful approach. Michael froze momentarily, then continued folding a shirt with deliberate care. When he turned to face me, his expression was a perfect blend of surprise and wounded innocence. "How could you even ask me that?" His voice held just the right note of hurt. "After everything we've built together? I'm killing myself at work so we can afford the life we want, the future we've planned, and this is the thanks I get?" Accusations and suspicion. His response was so convincing, so seemingly genuine, that shame washed over me. I apologized immediately, blaming work stress and insecurity for my outburst. Michael's forgiveness was swift and magnanimous, making me feel even worse for doubting him. That night, he held me close for the first time in months, and I convinced myself that my suspicions had been unfounded, a temporary madness born of insecurity. But as his breathing deepened into sleep beside me, the nagging doubt remained. The seed had grown into a persistent weed that no amount of rationalization could uproot. After 3 sleepless nights following my confrontation with Michael, I made a decision that went against everything I believed about trust in marriage. If Michael was truly faithful, I needed to know so I could silence my doubts and focus on fixing whatever had created this distance between us. And if my worst fears were justified, I deserved the truth, however painful. My first discovery came accidentally. While sorting laundry, I found a white dress shirt with a faint smudge of lipstick on the collar, a shade of deep burgundy I never wore. When I brought it to my nose, a floral perfume with notes of jasmine and something exotic clung to the fabric, nothing like my signature vanilla scent. I sat on the laundry room floor holding that shirt for nearly an hour, alternating between rational explanations and gut-wrenching suspicion. The following day, I went through our home office while Michael was at work. In the shredder bin, I found fragments of a receipt from Tiffany and Company. Dated 2 weeks earlier. I painstakingly pieced together enough to see the total, $4,200. My birthday had passed months ago, and our anniversary was still 2 months away. No gift matching that description had appeared in our home. With trembling hands, I logged into our mobile phone account. The detailed call and text logs revealed hundreds of messages and dozens of calls to a number I didn't recognize, many occurring late at night or during Michael's supposed business trips. The pattern was unmistakable, with particularly heavy communication during the weekend he had gone on his solo golfing retreat. That evening, I sat in our kitchen with Amanda, who had rushed over after hearing the strain in my voice during our brief phone conversation. "I think I need more concrete proof before I confront him again," I admitted, showing her my findings. "Last time, he made me feel crazy for even suggesting it." Amanda's face hardened with anger on my behalf. "That's called gaslighting, Becca. Classic cheater behavior." She took my hand firmly. "Listen to me. You need to be smart about this. If he's cheating, he'll just get better at hiding it now that you've raised suspicions." She was right, of course. Michael had always been methodical and strategic in business. He would approach deception with the same calculated precision. If I wanted undeniable evidence, I needed professional help. The following day, I contacted a private investigator recommended by Amanda's divorce attorney friend. Jack Reynolds was a former police detective with 20 years of experience in matrimonial cases. His office was modest but impeccably organized, much like the man himself. "I don't want to be doing this," I told him, fighting back tears of shame. "But I need to know the truth." Jack's expression remained neutral, his tone matter of fact. Most clients sitting in that chair feel exactly the same way. This isn't about being vindictive. It's about having information to make informed decisions about your life. His pragmatic approach comforted me somehow. This wasn't about catching Michael in a scandalous moment for revenge. It was about finally facing reality, whatever that might be. The stress of secret investigation took its toll. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loose on my frame. Sleep became elusive, leaving dark circles under my eyes that no concealer could hide. At work, I made uncharacteristic errors that drew concerned questions from my supervisor. I began declining social invitations, unable to maintain the facade of happy wife while suspecting my marriage was imploding. A week into the surveillance, Jack called me to his office. Without preamble, he slid a manila envelope across his desk. "I think you should prepare yourself," he said gently. Inside were dozens of photos, meticulously dated and time-stamped. Michael entering an upscale apartment building downtown. Michael and a young woman dining intimately at restaurants I had never visited. Michael with his arm around her waist, looking at her with an expression of unguarded adoration I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The final image showed them kissing in the parking garage beneath his office building, her body pressed against his car in a passionate embrace. The woman was strikingly beautiful, with glossy dark hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to admiration. She appeared to be in her late 20s, her professional attire suggesting she worked in Michael's industry. "Her name is Jessica Winters," Jack explained, passing me another document. 29 years old. She joined Michael's firm 8 months ago as an account manager. Based on my investigation, the relationship appears to have started approximately 6 months ago, shortly after she came under his direct supervision. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Countless moments when I had worried about our marriage while Michael had been building a relationship with another woman. The timeline explained so many changes I had noticed, but dismissed. "There's something else you should know," Jack added with obvious reluctance. "She's married." This unexpected detail sent me into a fresh spiral of research. That night, I searched Jessica Winters on social media, finding a carefully curated profile of a successful young professional. Her relationship status listed her as married to Daniel Winters, a software engineer at a prominent tech company. Their photos showed a handsome couple with expensive tastes and an active social life. I scrolled through images of their vacations, dinner parties, and professional achievements, wondering if Daniel harbored the same suspicions about his wife that had driven me to hire a private investigator. I continued monitoring Michael's behavior at home, now hyper-aware of patterns I had previously overlooked. He always took calls from work in another room or outside. His laptop remained closed when I entered his home office. He showered immediately upon returning home most evenings. Each observation was another weight on my already crushed heart. 2 days later, Jack delivered the final proof I needed, though I had already accepted the painful truth. He had followed Michael and Jessica to a jewelry store where Michael had purchased the heart-shaped pendant she wore in subsequent surveillance photos. Electronic records Jack had obtained showed dinner reservations, hotel bookings, and text message transcripts that left no room for innocent explanation. "What do you want to do with this information?" Jack asked during our final meeting. I had been considering this question for days, oscillating between confrontation and silent departure. "I need a little more time," I replied. "There's something important I need to verify first." That night, while Michael showered, I did something I had resisted for months. I picked up his unlocked phone from the bedside table and opened his messages. The conversation with JW was at the top of his list. My hands shook as I scrolled through intimate exchanges, loving words that should have been reserved for me, explicit photos that seared themselves into my memory. Then I saw it, the message that would change everything. Reservation confirmed at La Maison for the 17th at 8 p.m. Private corner table, champagne waiting. Perfect way to celebrate our 6-month anniversary. Can't wait to give you your special gift. The 17th. Our wedding anniversary. The tradition had always been dinner at our favorite restaurant, followed by exchanging thoughtful gifts. This year, Michael had told me he needed to travel for work on our anniversary. He had promised to make it up to me the following weekend with a special celebration. Now I understood he would be celebrating. Just not with me, and not our 10 years of marriage, but 6 months of betrayal with Jessica. I carefully replaced the phone, my mind whirling with pain and emerging resolve. As I heard the shower water stop, a plan began forming, one that would ensure Michael and Jessica's anniversary celebration would be unforgettable, though not in the way they intended. The discovery of Michael's planned anniversary dinner with Jessica broke something fundamental inside me. After he left for work the next morning, I collapsed on our kitchen floor, my body racked with sobs that seemed to come from some primal place I hadn't known existed within me. 10 years of memories flashed through my mind in cruel contrast to the reality I now faced. Our wedding vows echoed mockingly, forsaking all others, words Michael had repeated while looking into my eyes with apparent sincerity. Had he meant any of it? Or had I simply been convenient, comfortable, a socially acceptable partner to advance his career until someone more exciting came along? The betrayal felt physical, like a knife twisting in my chest. I struggled to breathe through waves of panic and grief. My hands trembled so violently I couldn't hold my phone to call Amanda. Eventually, I crawled to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left but bitter bile. When Amanda arrived an hour later, having sensed something was terribly wrong from my incoherent text, she found me still on the bathroom floor, staring blankly at the wall. "Oh, Becca," she whispered, kneeling beside me. "What happened?" I couldn't form the words at first, my throat raw from crying and retching. Finally, I managed to show her the screenshots I had taken of Michael's messages. "Our anniversary," I croaked. "He's taking her to celebrate on our wedding anniversary." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "That absolute bastard." She helped me to the couch and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, my body shivering despite the warm spring day. "I'm staying here tonight." "You shouldn't be alone." That night became a blur of tears, rage, and crushing despair. I alternated between wanting to burn all of Michael's possessions and begging Amanda to tell me what I had done wrong, how I had failed so completely as a wife that he had turned to someone else. Each time, she firmly reminded me that Michael's choices reflected his character, not my worth. "Remember when Lisa's husband cheated last year?" Amanda asked, referring to another friend from our college days. "You told her it wasn't her fault, that she deserved better. Why can't you believe the same about yourself?" I had no answer. The rational part of me understood Amanda was right, but rationality had no power against the tidal wave of emotion drowning me. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by nightmares where I watched Michael and Jessica laughing at my ignorance. I woke gasping for air, certain I was suffocating under the weight of betrayal. During those dark hours, I mentally revisited every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I had missed, warnings I had ignored. Each memory was now tainted, every happy moment questioned. Had he been thinking of her during our vacation to Bermuda 3 months ago? Had he texted her from our bathroom while I slept beside him? How many times had he left our bed to call her? The questions multiplied until my head throbbed with their relentless assault. The following days passed in a fog of functional depression. I called in sick to work, unable to face colleagues who might notice my red-rimmed eyes and hollow expression. I existed in a liminal space, mechanically performing basic tasks while emotionally shattered. Showering required monumental effort. Eating became an obligation I fulfilled without tasting anything. I found myself standing in our bedroom, studying the photographs that chronicled our life together. Our wedding day, Michael dipping me for a kiss against the sunset backdrop. Hiking in New Hampshire, his arm around my waist as we smiled from a scenic overlook. Christmas mornings, anniversary celebrations, random moments of joy captured and framed as testaments to our supposed happiness. In a moment of raw anguish, I swept them all from the dresser, the shattering glass momentarily satisfying before remorse flooded in. I knelt among the shards, carefully extracting a photo from our honeymoon, and wept anew at the hopeful young woman smiling back at me, blissfully unaware of the heartbreak awaiting her. As the initial shock began to recede, my mind circled continuously around one devastating truth. Michael had scheduled his romantic dinner with Jessica on our wedding anniversary. This wasn't just an affair born of opportunity or momentary weakness. This was calculated cruelty, a deliberate desecration of what should have been sacred between us. He had told me he would be traveling for work, had promised to celebrate the following weekend, all while planning to spend our special day with her. I replayed moments where Michael had lied directly to my face. The weekend he had supposedly gone golfing, returning with stories of difficult sand traps and impressive drives. The late nights he had claimed to spend working on complex financial models. The business dinners with clients who never existed. Each memory twisted the knife deeper, transforming my grief into something darker and more potent. My physical health deteriorated alongside my emotional state. Migraines became frequent, blinding me with pain that at least temporarily distracted from the emotional agony. I lost 12 pounds in 10 days, my clothes hanging from my frame like borrowed garments. Sleep deprivation left me disoriented and fragile. Amanda found me one evening sitting in the dark, staring at divorce attorney websites. I don't even know where to begin, I admitted, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. How do you dismantle a decade of life together? How do you divide furniture and finances when you can barely remember to brush your teeth? She sat beside me, taking the laptop and closing it gently. One step at a time. But Becca, you need to make a decision. Are you going to confront Michael first, or just serve him with papers? The question crystallized something inside me. Michael had been making choices for months, choices that affected my life, my future, my health without my knowledge or consent. He had stripped me of agency, reducing me to an unwitting character in the story of his affair. The thought of him continuing to control the narrative, of Jessica celebrating their relationship while remaining ignorant of the destruction they had caused, suddenly became intolerable. Neither, I said, a spark of determination breaking through the fog of despair. Before I do anything legal, there's something else I need to do. For the first time in days, I felt something besides pain and confusion. A sense of purpose, fragile but growing, took root alongside my grief. Michael and Jessica had orchestrated their happiness at my expense. They had created a fantasy world of secret meetings and passionate encounters while I stumbled through an increasingly empty marriage. They had transformed our anniversary into their celebration. As I stared out the window at the life I had believed was mine, watching the neighbor children riding bikes in the fading spring light, a plan began forming in my mind. Not a plan born of reconciliation hopes or simple revenge, but something more profound, a reclamation of power, an assertion of truth. If Michael and Jessica wanted to celebrate their relationship, perhaps they should do so with complete honesty on the table. Amanda, I said slowly, I need you to help me find Jessica's husband's contact information. My best friend's eyes widened momentarily before her expression shifted to one of grim understanding. You're going to tell him. I'm going to do more than tell him, I replied, feeling stronger with each word. I'm going to make sure Michael and Jessica have an anniversary dinner they'll never forget. The morning after my decision, I woke with clarity that had eluded me for weeks. The crushing weight of victimhood had lifted, replaced by purposeful determination. I was done crying in darkened rooms while Michael constructed his double life. It was time to bring everything into the light. My first task was locating Daniel Winters, Jessica's husband. Through social media and the information Jack had provided, I discovered he worked as a senior software engineer at a tech firm downtown. His company website featured a professional photograph and brief biography highlighting his expertise in cybersecurity. Unlike his wife, Daniel maintained minimal social media presence, but what existed portrayed a dedicated professional with outdoor hobbies and a small circle of close friends. I debated how to make initial contact. A direct message might be ignored or dismissed as a prank. Showing up at his workplace seemed inappropriately public for such a personal matter. Finally, I opted for the most straightforward approach, an email from my personal account with the subject line, "Information about your wife, Jessica." "Mr. Winters," I wrote, "my name is Rebecca Taylor. I believe my husband Michael and your wife Jessica are having an affair. I have concrete evidence I'm willing to share if you would be open to meeting. This isn't easy for either of us, but I believe you deserve to know the truth, just as I did." I included my phone number and sent the message before I could reconsider. Within 2 hours, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Rebecca?" The male voice sounded controlled but strained. "Yes, this is Rebecca. This is Daniel Winters. About your email." He paused, and I could hear his measured breathing. "I need to know if this is some kind of mistake or joke." "I wish it were," I replied softly, "but I have photographs, text messages, and credit card statements. They've been seeing each other for 6 months." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice rougher than before. "I'd like to see this evidence. When can we meet?" We arranged to meet the following afternoon at a quiet coffee shop in a neighborhood far from both our homes and workplaces. I arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy while allowing me to watch for his arrival. I recognized Daniel immediately from his company photo, though the man who walked through the door looked more strained than his professional headshot, with shadows under his eyes suggesting recent sleepless nights. He spotted me and approached directly, his posture rigid with tension. "Rebecca?" I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Thank you for coming, Daniel." For a moment, we simply studied each other, two strangers connected by painful circumstances beyond our making. Up close, I could see Daniel was attractive in an understated way, with intelligent eyes and a strong jawline partially hidden behind neatly trimmed facial hair. He wore no wedding ring, I noticed, wondering if that was habitual or recent. "I brought everything," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "I suggest starting with the private investigator's report. The photographs are difficult to see." Daniel opened the folder with steady hands that betrayed only the slightest tremor. I watched his expression shift as he methodically reviewed each piece of evidence, his professional analytical nature evident in his systematic approach. When he reached the text messages, including the anniversary dinner plans, his composed facade cracked momentarily. "Our anniversary was last month," he said quietly. "Jessica said she was too busy with work to celebrate properly. Suggested we postpone until summer." The parallel to my situation wasn't lost on either of us. We sat in silence as Daniel finished reviewing the evidence, his breathing becoming more controlled with each document, as though he was mentally fortifying himself against the emotional impact. "How long have you suspected?" he finally asked, closing the folder. "A few months. The confirmation came recently." I hesitated before asking, "What about you?" Daniel's laugh held no humor. "I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Jessica's always worked long hours, been ambitious. The late nights and weekend meetings seemed plausible." He rubbed his temple. "There were signs I ignored. New clothes. Changed passwords. Emotional distance. The classic playbook, apparently," I said with bitter recognition. As we talked, a strange solidarity formed between us, a connection forged in shared betrayal. Daniel explained he and Jessica had been married for 3 years after meeting at a tech conference. They had no children, their focus having been on establishing their careers before starting a family. The revelation of her affair had implications beyond emotional betrayal. They had recently purchased an expensive condominium with a mortgage that required both their incomes. "What are you planning to do?" Daniel asked eventually. I took a deep breath. "That's actually why I wanted to meet in person. I have a proposition that might give us both some closure before we decide on next steps." Carefully, I outlined my plan. Michael and Jessica had a reservation at La Maison, Boston's most exclusive French restaurant, on the evening of my wedding anniversary. I proposed that Daniel and I secure the adjacent table, allowing us to observe their romantic evening before making our presence known. "You want to confront them publicly?" Daniel sounded skeptical. "Not exactly," I clarified. "I want them to see us together. I want them to know that their secret isn't secret anymore, that the people they've betrayed have found each other. I want them to realize that their actions have consequences beyond their little bubble of deception." Daniel considered this, fingers drumming thoughtfully on the table. "It's not about humiliating them. It's about reclaiming control," I explained. "They've been writing this narrative without our consent. I'm tired of being a passive character in their story." After several minutes of contemplation, Daniel nodded slowly. "I'm in. But we should be strategic about this." Over the next hour, our plan evolved from simple confrontation to something more nuanced. Daniel, with his analytical mind, suggested we arrive after Michael and Jessica were seated, but before their main course, maximizing the disruption to their evening while ensuring they couldn't simply flee without causing a scene. I proposed we dress formally, presenting ourselves as composed adults rather than scorned spouses. "We should appear as though we're having a perfectly pleasant evening," I suggested. "Nothing dramatic or hysterical. Just two people enjoying dinner who happen to recognize acquaintances at a nearby table." Daniel's mouth curved in the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. The casual "oh, fancy seeing you here" approach. "I like it." We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet again to finalize details. As we prepared to leave, Daniel hesitated. "Rebecca? Thank you for coming to me directly. You could have just served Michael with divorce papers and left me in the dark." His gratitude caught me off guard. "Everyone deserves the truth, Daniel." In the days leading up to the confrontation, our preparation became almost therapeutic. I selected a black cocktail dress that had always drawn compliments, one Michael had never seen. I scheduled appointments for hair, makeup, and a manicure, investing in my appearance in ways I had neglected during my weeks of depression. Each decision felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that grief had temporarily stolen. Daniel and I met twice more, refining our approach and preparing for various scenarios. What if they denied everything? What if one confessed while the other lied? What if they separated upon seeing us, one fleeing to the restroom? We developed contingencies for each possibility, finding unexpected moments of laughter in our strategic planning. Amanda remained my emotional anchor throughout the preparation. She helped me rehearse calm responses to potential confrontations, ensuring I wouldn't be overwhelmed by emotion when facing Michael and Jessica. "Remember," she coached during our final practice session, "you hold the moral high ground. You don't need to raise your voice or make accusations. Your presence alone delivers the message." The night before the planned confrontation, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, studying my reflection. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the devastated shell who had collapsed on the kitchen floor weeks earlier. My eyes held purpose rather than pain. My posture spoke of determination instead of defeat. "Are you sure about this?" Amanda asked during our final phone call that evening. "You could still choose a private confrontation. Or no confrontation at all." I considered her questions seriously, searching for any hesitation within myself. "I'm sure. This isn't about revenge, Amanda. It's about truth." Michael and Jessica created this reality where they could have their secret relationship while maintaining their marriages. I'm simply bringing their two worlds together. As I laid out my clothes for the following evening, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened at La Maison would mark the end of one chapter in my life and the beginning of another. For the first time since discovering Michael's betrayal, I looked toward that future not with dread, but with cautious hope. I had survived the worst pain imaginable. I could survive whatever came next. I sent a final text to Daniel. Ready for tomorrow? His response came immediately. Absolutely. See you at 7:45. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply and dreamlessly, my body finally relaxing as my mind accepted the path forward. The day of the confrontation arrived with strange serenity. I moved through my morning routine with deliberate calm, as though preparing for an important business presentation rather than a life-altering confrontation. Michael had left early for meetings, his goodbye kiss landing somewhere near my cheek as I pretended to sleep. That small deception would be his last opportunity to fool me. By late afternoon, I had transformed into someone barely recognizable from the broken woman of recent weeks. My hair fell in loose waves, professionally styled to frame my face. My makeup enhanced rather than masked, giving me a polished confidence. The black dress fit perfectly, neither overtly sexy nor matronly, striking exactly the note of elegant self-possession I sought. Daniel and I had agreed to meet at a hotel bar near La Maison for a final review of our plan. When I arrived, he stood to greet me, his appreciative glance boosting my confidence further. "You look fantastic," he said simply. "So do you," I replied truthfully. Daniel had chosen a charcoal suit that complemented his athletic build, his usual casual style replaced by refined sophistication. Over sparkling water, we had both agreed to remain completely sober. We confirmed the evening's timeline once more. Our reservation at La Maison was for 8:15, 15 minutes after Michael and Jessica's. The maitre d' had been appropriately compensated to ensure our table would be directly adjacent to theirs, separated only by a decorative lattice that provided the illusion of privacy while allowing clear visibility. "Any last-minute doubts?" Daniel asked, studying my expression. I considered the question honestly. Not about doing this. Only about what comes after. He nodded in understanding. One step at a time. Tonight is about truth. Tomorrow is about consequences. We walked the short distance to La Maison in companionable silence, each lost in private thoughts. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a restored Victorian mansion, its understated exterior belying the opulence within. Through the windows, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white-clothed tables where Boston's elite engaged in quiet conversation over exquisite cuisine. At precisely 8:10, we approached the maitre d', who recognized Daniel immediately. "Mr. Winters, your table is ready. Please follow me." As we wound through the dining room, my heart rate accelerated. Then I saw them, seated at a corner table partially secluded by ornate lattice. Michael looked handsome in his favorite navy suit, leaning forward to speak intimately with Jessica, whose back was to us. Her sleek dark hair was swept up, exposing a slender neck adorned with what I recognized as the Tiffany pendant from Michael's secret purchase. The maitre d' seated us with perfect positioning. From my chair, I could clearly see Michael's profile and Jessica's three-quarter view, while remaining just outside their immediate line of sight unless they turned specifically in our direction. Daniel sat opposite me, his view mirroring mine but focused on Jessica. "They haven't noticed us yet," he murmured, opening his menu with practiced casualness. I forced myself to breathe normally, fighting the momentary urge to flee. Michael laughed at something Jessica said, his expression more carefree than I had seen in months. She reached across the table to touch his hand, the gesture intimate and practiced. They looked like any couple celebrating a special occasion, except they were both wearing wedding rings that bound them to other people. We ordered wine and appetizers, maintaining the charade of normal diners enjoying an upscale meal. I found myself studying Jessica more closely now. In person, she was indeed beautiful, but in a carefully constructed way that spoke of significant effort. Her gestures seemed practiced, her laughter precisely calibrated. I wondered if Michael noticed this performance or if he was too enthralled by the novelty she represented. Through the lattice, fragments of their conversation reached us. Murmured endearments, inside jokes, plans for a weekend getaway to Martha's Vineyard next month, coinciding exactly with the business conference Michael had told me would take him to Chicago. Daniel maintained remarkable composure, though I noticed his knuckles whitening around his water glass when Jessica mentioned their shared credit card. I told Daniel it was a work expense. He never questions the credit card statements anyway. The casual dismissal of her husband as an unobservant fool seemed to affect Daniel more deeply than the evidence of physical infidelity. His jaw tightened momentarily before he consciously relaxed it, returning his attention to our shared appetizer. Our main courses arrived just as Michael presented Jessica with a small box wrapped in signature Tiffany blue. My stomach clenched as she opened it with exaggerated excitement, revealing diamond earrings that caught the candlelight. She leaned across the table to kiss him, whispering something that made him smile with smug satisfaction. "Now?" Daniel asked quietly, his eyes meeting mine. I nodded, suddenly completely certain. "Now." We stood simultaneously, glasses in hand, and stepped the short distance to their table. For a suspended moment, neither Michael nor Jessica noticed our presence, lost in their private celebration. Then Michael glanced up, his expression shifting from annoyance at the interruption to shocked recognition. "Rebecca?" His voice cracked on my name, color draining from his face. Jessica turned, confusion transforming to horror as she registered Daniel's presence beside me. "Daniel? What are you? How did you?" "Happy anniversary, Michael," I said calmly, raising my glass in mock toast. Though I'm not sure which anniversary we're celebrating now. Our 10 years of marriage, or your 6 months with Jessica. The surrounding conversations quieted as nearby diners sensed the unfolding drama. Michael's eyes darted frantically between me and Daniel, then to the surrounding tables, clearly calculating the public relations disaster unfolding in this exclusive restaurant frequented by clients and colleagues. "Rebecca, this isn't what it looks like," he began, the cliché falling pathetically from his lips. "Actually, Michael, it's exactly what it looks like," I replied, my voice steady. "You're having dinner with your mistress on our wedding anniversary, wearing the watch I gave you last year, while she wears earrings you bought with our joint account." Jessica turned to Daniel, her composure crumbling. "Danny, I can explain everything." She's manipulating the situation, making it seem worse than it is. Daniel's laugh held no humor. "Worse than sleeping with her husband for 6 months? Worse than lying about working late when you were in hotels together? Please explain how this could be misinterpreted." Michael attempted damage control, lowering his voice to an urgent whisper. "Let's discuss this privately. This isn't the place." "Why not here?" I interrupted. "You chose this restaurant. You chose this night. Our anniversary, Michael. Did you think that was clever? A special little joke between you and Jessica." Jessica's eyes filled with tears, though whether from genuine remorse or the public humiliation, I couldn't tell. "Daniel, please. Not like this." "When would be better, Jessica?" Daniel asked with deadly calm. "After another 6 months? After you came home from weekend trips with him and slept in our bed?" When exactly should I have scheduled my discovery of your affair? By now, the neighboring tables had abandoned any pretense of not listening. The maitre d' approached with professional concern, clearly torn between preventing a scene and respecting the delicate situation. "Is everything all right here?" he inquired discreetly. "Just an unexpected reunion," I replied smoothly. "We discovered our spouses are celebrating their anniversary tonight, the same evening as our wedding anniversary. Such a remarkable coincidence." The maitre d' withdrew, recognizing the explosive tension beneath my civilized explanation. Michael made one final attempt to salvage the situation. "Rebecca, I made a terrible mistake. We should talk about this at home. I never meant to hurt you." The practiced sincerity in his voice The same tone he had used to deny my earlier suspicions crystallized something inside me. That's the difference between us, Michael. You lie effortlessly. I never developed that skill. I turned to Jessica, who sat frozen between fight and flight. The pendant looks lovely on you. Much nicer than the bracelet he gave me for Christmas while you were apparently sleeping together. I suppose the price difference reflects his priorities. Daniel placed his hand lightly on my shoulder, a gesture of support rather than restraint. I think we've said what we came to say. Enjoy the rest of your anniversary dinner. The divorce papers will be forthcoming. As we turned to leave, Michael stood abruptly. Rebecca, wait. You can't just. I can and I am, I interrupted, suddenly exhausted by his performance. We're done, Michael. Enjoy your new life. I hope it was worth the cost. Jessica remained seated, tears now streaming unchecked down her face, smearing the careful makeup. As Daniel and I walked away, I heard her hissing accusation to Michael. You said she never checked your phone. You said she was clueless. We collected our belongings from our abandoned table, left cash to cover our barely touched meal, and walked out of La Maison into the cool evening air. Neither of us spoke until we had traveled several blocks, the restaurant and its drama receding behind us. Are you okay? Daniel finally asked as we paused at a quiet intersection. I considered the question honestly, taking inventory of my emotions. The anticipated breakdown hadn't materialized. Instead, I felt an odd lightness, as though I had set down a crushing weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I think I am, I replied with mild surprise. Not happy, exactly, but unburdened. Daniel nodded in understanding. I kept waiting to feel satisfied seeing their faces, but it wasn't satisfaction. More like confirmation. Seeing the truth acknowledged after months of gaslighting. We found ourselves at a small park, taking seats on a bench beneath flowering cherry trees. The night air carried the scent of spring, a promise of renewal that seemed suddenly relevant to my circumstances. What happens tomorrow? Daniel asked, giving voice to the question we had both deliberately avoided in our planning. I call a divorce attorney, I replied without hesitation. Beyond that, I'm not sure yet. Daniel smiled slightly. Same, though I suspect Jessica will beat me to it. She's always been efficient. We sat in companionable silence, two strangers connected by extraordinary circumstances, watching the city lights flicker against the darkening sky. Something had formed between us during our weeks of planning, not romance, but a foundation of mutual respect and understanding that felt valuable in its own right. Thank you for tonight, I said finally. I couldn't have done it alone. Daniel's hand found mine on the bench between us, a brief squeeze of acknowledgement. Neither could I. Strength in numbers, I guess. As we eventually parted ways, exchanging contact information for the practical matters that would follow, I realized the confrontation had given me something beyond the vindication I had sought. It had shown me my own resilience, my capacity to face devastation and remain standing. Whatever came next, I would face it with the same strength I had discovered tonight. The morning after the confrontation dawned with surreal clarity. I half expected to wake to desperate calls and texts from Michael, but my phone remained silent. He hadn't come home, which was both a relief and a stark confirmation that our marriage was truly over. I moved through our house with new awareness, seeing it not as the home we had built together, but as a space that would soon be divided, sold, or abandoned in the divorce process. My first call was to a divorce attorney recommended by Amanda's cousin. Kathleen O'Malley had a reputation for fair but fierce representation, specializing in cases involving infidelity. Her secretary scheduled a consultation for the following morning, the efficiency somehow comforting amid my emotional upheaval. My second call was to my boss, requesting an urgent personal day. To my surprise, he responded with immediate concern. Take whatever time you need, Rebecca. Your team can handle things until you're ready to return. His understanding brought unexpected tears. For weeks, I had been compartmentalizing my personal crisis, believing no one at work had noticed my distraction. The gentle reminder that others saw and cared about my well-being cracked the professional facade I had maintained. By mid-afternoon, Michael finally reached out via text. "We need to talk. I'm staying at a hotel. Can we meet somewhere neutral?" I studied the message, searching for the emotional response I expected: anger, hurt, the urge to demand immediate explanations. Instead, I felt a curious detachment, as though the message came from a distant acquaintance rather than the man who had been my husband for a decade. "My attorney will contact you," I replied simply. "Until then, I prefer written communication only." His response was immediate and pleading: "Becca, please. Last night was a mistake. We can work through this." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that would matter to either of us. Amanda arrived that evening with takeout and determination. "I've come to help you triage," she announced, setting down bags of Thai food and a bottle of wine. Food, practical planning, and only then are you allowed to cry if you need to. Her pragmatic approach was exactly what I needed. We ate at the kitchen island, making lists of immediate priorities, changing passwords on all accounts, documenting assets, securing important documents, and notifying my parents before they heard through mutual friends. "Have you heard from Daniel?" Amanda asked as we sorted through shared financial statements. "Just a brief text confirming he's meeting with his attorney tomorrow too," I replied. "We're giving each other space to process individually." Amanda nodded approvingly. "Smart. You two have a unique connection, but mixing it with divorce proceedings could get complicated." Later that night, after Amanda had gone home with promises to check in the next day, I found myself in the walk-in closet Michael and I had once shared. His clothes still hung beside mine, his shoes neatly aligned on their designated rack. The mundane domesticity of these arrangements struck me as absurd now, physical remnants of a relationship that no longer existed. Acting on impulse, I began removing his items, placing them in suitcases and boxes. The methodical task became unexpectedly therapeutic, each emptied hanger representing another thread of connection severed. By midnight, I had extracted Michael's physical presence from our bedroom, bathroom, and closet, stacking his belongings in the guest room with clinical efficiency. The following weeks unfolded in a blur of legal consultations, financial negotiations, and emotional recalibration. Michael attempted reconciliation twice more, first with a heartfelt email detailing his regrets and promises to attend couples therapy, then with an extravagant flower delivery that I immediately donated to a nearby nursing home. Each gesture felt hollow, performances designed to ease his guilt rather than address the irreparable damage to our relationship. I learned through my attorney that Jessica and Daniel were proceeding with their divorce as well. Unlike Michael, Jessica had apparently accepted the finality of her situation, focusing on securing her financial interests rather than salvaging her marriage. This information came as no surprise. Jessica had struck me as pragmatic even in her deception. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Daniel suggested meeting for coffee. We chose a different cafe from our previous meetings, symbolically separating this conversation from our shared past. "How are you holding up?" he asked after we had exchanged the requisite pleasantries. "Better than expected, actually," I admitted. "The legal process is draining, but emotionally I'm finding clarity I didn't anticipate." Daniel nodded in understanding. "I've had the same experience." Once the initial shock wore off, I realized Jessica and I had been functioning as roommates more than spouses for the past year. We compared notes on our respective divorce proceedings, finding unexpected moments of humor in the absurdity of dividing lives that had once seemed permanently intertwined. Daniel had moved to a temporary apartment, while Jessica remained in their condominium until the property could be sold. "She's dating someone new already," he mentioned without apparent bitterness. "Not Michael, interestingly enough." Michael moved in with his brother, I shared. Apparently the hotel budget was unsustainable. Our conversation shifted from our former spouses to our emerging futures. Daniel had accepted a job offer from a competing tech firm, wanting a fresh start away from colleagues who knew about his marital drama. I had rediscovered my passion for photography, spending weekends capturing urban landscapes rather than dwelling in an empty house filled with fading memories. As spring gave way to summer, I established new routines that gradually became comfortable. Weekly therapy sessions helped me process the complex emotions of betrayal and divorce. Amanda organized regular outings with friends who had rallied around me with unexpected loyalty. My parents visited from Florida, their presence a reminder of unconditional support that existed independent of my marital status. Work became an unexpected sanctuary. I threw myself into new marketing campaigns, my renewed focus earning recognition from senior management. When a promotion opportunity arose to lead the digital marketing division, I applied with confidence I might have lacked months earlier and was selected from a competitive field of candidates. 6 months after the confrontation at La Maison, I finalized the sale of the house Michael and I had once called home. Standing in the empty living room where we had hosted dinner parties and holiday gatherings, I expected to feel overwhelming sadness. Instead, I experienced a quiet acknowledgement of chapters closing and opening, the space now representing transition rather than loss. My new apartment overlooked the Charles River, its modern minimalism a deliberate contrast to the traditional aesthetics of my marital home. Each piece of furniture, each decorative element had been selected by me alone, reflecting preferences I had sometimes compromised during my marriage. The space became physical manifestation of my reclaimed identity. Daniel and I maintained contact, our unique connection evolving into genuine friendship. We occasionally met for dinner or museum exhibitions, sharing updates on our parallel journeys through divorce and renewal. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a shared experience that required no explanation or justification. Nearly a year after discovering Michael's betrayal, I encountered him unexpectedly at a colleague's retirement party. He had lost weight, his formerly immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. When he approached me, his expression held a combination of wariness and hope. "You look wonderful, Rebecca," he said, his voice carrying the hesitation of someone addressing a stranger rather than a former spouse. "Thank you, Michael. How have you been?" Our brief conversation revealed he had transferred to his company's Seattle office, seeking the geographic distance I had achieved emotionally. Jessica had ended their relationship within weeks of our confrontation, apparently unwilling to build a future on such problematic foundations. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," he said finally, eyes searching mine for any remnant of our former connection. "I think about what I threw away every day." A year earlier, these words might have provided vindication or even rekindled hope. Now, they simply confirmed what I already knew. Some choices cannot be unmade. Some trust once broken cannot be restored. "I hope you find happiness, Michael," I replied sincerely. "We both deserve that, just not with each other anymore." As I walked away, I realized his betrayal, while devastating, had ultimately forced me onto a path of self-discovery I might never have chosen voluntarily. The woman who had collapsed in grief on her kitchen floor had transformed into someone stronger, more self-aware, and ultimately more authentic than the person who had existed within the comfortable confines of an imperfect marriage. That evening, I called Daniel to share the encounter. Our conversation drifted to our evolving perspectives on relationships and trust. "The strangest part," I admitted, "is that I'm actually grateful in some ways. Not for the betrayal itself, but for what it taught me about my own resilience." "I understand completely," Daniel replied. I realized I had been accepting emotional scraps and calling it a relationship. Now I know what I really need from a partner. The following weekend, I joined a photography workshop I had been considering for months. As I captured images of urban architecture against brilliant autumn foliage, I reflected on the nature of perspective, how changing one's angle of vision transforms the entire composition. My marriage had once been the frame through which I viewed my life. Its removal, while initially devastating, had ultimately expanded my field of vision beyond boundaries I hadn't even recognized. The healing process wasn't linear. I still experienced occasional dreams where Michael and I were still together, waking with momentary confusion that gave way to acceptance. Certain songs or restaurants still triggered memories that could ambush me with unexpected emotion. But these moments no longer derailed me. They simply existed as part of the complex tapestry of my experience. The most profound lesson emerged gradually, trusting myself. Before discovering Michael's affair, I had ignored intuitive warnings, dismissed inconsistencies, and silenced my own doubts in service of preserving what I believed was a successful marriage. Now, I recognize that genuine trust begins with honoring one's own perceptions rather than surrendering them to someone else's narrative. This insight extended beyond romantic relationships to every aspect of my life. I became more discerning about friendships, more assertive in professional settings, and more authentic in my self-expression. The woman who had once feared confrontation had discovered her voice precisely when she needed it most. As I approached the second anniversary of that fateful discovery, not of Michael's affair, but of my own strength, I find myself contemplating the nature of betrayal and growth. Perhaps the most surprising outcome of this painful journey has been the discovery that happiness doesn't require perfect circumstances or unblemished relationships. It emerges from alignment between our internal truth and external reality, from the courage to face painful facts rather than comfortable illusions. I don't know what the future holds. I've begun dating again, approaching new relationships with neither paralyzing suspicion nor naive trust, but with healthy discernment. Daniel has become a valued friend whose perspective I treasure, our unusual beginning having created a foundation of authenticity rare in any relationship. What I know with certainty is this: we cannot control whether others honor their commitments to us, but we can always honor our commitments to ourselves. True security comes not from external guarantees, but from internal certainty that whatever happens, we possess the resilience to survive, learn, and ultimately thrive. If you've ever faced betrayal or heartbreak, know that the initial devastation doesn't define you. Your response to it does. Trust your instincts, honor your pain, and remember that healing isn't about returning to who you were before the wound, but becoming someone stronger and wiser because of it. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between comfortable illusion and painful truth? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our community of resilient souls. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapter of your life begins after turning the page on something you thought you couldn't live without. Thank you for listening, and until next time, trust yourself first.